name is Sarah, and I'm working at Byggvarubedömningen as an account and marketing manager. And I'm here today to let you know a little bit more about Byggvarubedömningen, who are we, what we do, our role in the industry. So I start with...
Trevligt, jag skulle precis gå leta.
Sorry. So I start with tell a little bit more about Byggvarubedömningen. And we are an environmental assessment system. We assess products, but we also offer a database and a logbook tool where you can do registration and you can do documentation for the assessed products. So we are a non-profit cooperative association owned by our 76 members. So you could see an example or all the members actually in the picture to the right. It's property owners, municipalities, constructors, and so on. And we were formed 2006, but I would say that we started to work with this for real at 2012 because it was then we needed to recruit employees. So we are still member-owned, we are still non-profit, but now we works in another way full-time with this, all of this. And we have a board, and we also have some groups, the criteria groups, system groups, member groups. And the important thing in that is that we work with the members, we work with the industry. It's very important for us that we develop our organization, our system, our criteria, according what the industry needs. So in all of these groups, it's representatives from the member organizations. So we do this together with the industry, I would say. So, the offer, what could we offer? What do we do? And I could start with explaining in 4 steps. And the first step is that we assess products. And it's on chemical content and life cycle aspects, which gives us a total assessment. We also do assessments according to sustainable supply chain, but that is a separate assessment. It's not included. And the focus today is the chemicals and the life cycle aspects, and it's because the project requirements looks like that for now. The project requirements, it's not that much about sustainable supply chain yet, but it will come, and then you need to know that we offer that too. And important with the first step is to know that everything comes from the project requirements. We don't set the project requirements, and we don't come with a law or anything like that. We are just the system in between that helps you to meet the requirements. So we have many products in our database, and it's because many projects in Sweden set requirements about you need to have an assessed product if they are going to use it. When a product have an assessment, we publish it in our database. And in the database, we have thousands of users from the building projects. So they search for information, they search for products, and they will find it in the database if the product is there. So we built a user-friendly database that you don't need to be a chemical expert, you don't need to be the ones that can very much about the products. You could just search for products, find the content, and see how could this product affect health and environment. So user-friendly, and it should be easy to find information. And then we have the logbook tool as the third step, and the tool where you could create a logbook for a project, a building, or something else, and you could create a folder structure, you could add products, and you can add information that you need for this specific project. We have functions like deviations handling, we have reminder functions, exports, everything that would make it easier for you when you work in projects. With all these 3 steps, it's assessment, database, logbook tool. It ends with the traceability. And maybe that's the most important thing to know. Why do we do this? Why do we need this information? And this is the traceability about what products have been used in example properties. Which products did we use in a specific building? Organization and companies needs and should know which products that have been used, where did they use it, and how much did they use of the products. And it's very, very important, for example, the property owner when it comes to inventories, remediations, but it's also about the responsibility when it comes to health and environment. Which leads me to the aim. What's our aim? And it's that projects can make product choices based on chemical content, on assessments. But it's also that our database gives you the possibility to meet requirements when it comes to certifications for buildings. So if you need, you will meet the requirements for BREEAM, Miljöbyggnad, or something like that. You can use our tool to find how is this product, does this product fulfill the requirement for this specific certification. So it's more than just our assessments. And the logbook tool could be used for saving documentation. And the important thing to know is it's just not for now. It's many, many, many years ahead. It's about the knowledge of content that will be needed for the future. So when we talk about renovations, demolitions, you need this information. It could be good products, bad products. It doesn't matter. You need the information. What did we build in? And we have the assessment results. And maybe you have seen it, maybe you have not seen it, and maybe you will see it in their project requirements, because a lot of building projects set the requirements that it must be assessed products. And we have 3 symbols. Maybe I would not say it easy, but it's so easy it could be when we talk of these difficult things. So I will start to show you the symbols so you get to learn a little bit more about them. We have the green symbol, which is recommended. We have the yellow one, which is accepted. We have the red one, which is to be avoided. And I need to explain what this means. And first of all, we are not a certification system. We are not a system that approve, not approve products at all. We give them an assessment result based on our criteria. And from project to project, you can decide if you want to use the products or not. If you see the green and the yellow symbols, recommended and accepted, so you could see that go for it when it comes to health and environment. And if you see the red products, it's not a forbidden product, but it's like, stop, look at it. Why is it red? Should we use it? Should we look for options? Should we use something else? And if we decide to use it anyway, it should be documented. So it's not about forbid products, not say we could not use the red products, because every building, every project includes red products, but we need less of them and we need information about them anyway. It's very important for, especially, for example, the property owners. And a little short, I will not take you through the chemical information, but it's just a picture about what we do the assessment of. And for example, it could be attached to cancer, PBT properties, allergenic substances, and so on. And it's very interesting, and you can find more information if you go to our website. So I will not take this with you today because it will be too much. But also the life cycle aspects, where I could take some example. It's manufacture of the product, packaging, the waste of and demolitions. So it's a part of sustainability that we focus on, and the chemical content and the life cycle aspect give you a total assessment. And I just wanted to show you a print screen of the tool where all the products will come to an end. And my recommendation is always to test through the website, to get to learn the system, see the system. But it's in this tool, all the products with assessment will be registered. So it's where all the documentation and info will be collected, and where you in building projects invite architects, subcontractors, and everyone that you want to be able to meet the requirements for a project. So it's like a digital platform with a lot of functions that could be used to make it easier to find the information and collect the information. And to the end, and why byggvarubedömningen? It's about more and more building projects that requires both assessed products. They want to know about the products that they're going to use, and they set requirements for logbooks. And our database should be seen as a marketplace. Right now, you shouldn't wait for the requirements. You should be in the database so they can choose between your products and other products. If you're not in the database, you will not be chosen sometimes. So be ahead before the requirements to stay relevant, I think, on the Swedish market. And it's also, like I mentioned, about the certification of buildings, which is very often required. And then you also use these kind of size systems to see, does this product fulfills the requirements? And just one more thing, and I just want to say, just think about the future and that we all have a responsibility. But most important is that we need to know what products we are using, how these affect health and environment, and where the products have been used. So we don't want to build blindly, and that's the most important thing. And I have so much to say, and if you want to know more, or if you need help with your assessment or the projects or something, it could be the documentation, how do we do, the process, where do I start? You could always contact us, we can tell you more, and you could also send an email to our info address. It's the easiest way, I would say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was really interesting. And Sarah will also be in the meeting place in Stockholm, so you can network with her there if you have any follow-up questions.
Yes.
Thank you so much. And now we want to move on. And I would like to give the floor to Fredrik Berg and Georgios Eleftheradis, you have to maybe help me there, from Hellström Advokatbyrå, and they are working with foreign companies and establishments, and they will share some insights regarding construction law. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, it's time for the grey lawyers to have a 15-minute show for you. And as you were told, we're from Hellström Advokatbyrå. And we're going to talk some today about a short introduction to Swedish construction law, or the standard agreements in AB04 and ABT06. Usually this is a full-day seminar to learn about all the clauses and the regulations, but we're going to try to squeeze it in for about 15 minutes. Yes, and we're already presented a little bit more about the law firm. It's a mid-sized Swedish law firm situated in Stockholm. And we're about 50 lawyers today. And we're a full-service law firm doing mostly anything needed for companies in Sweden and internationally. And we have colleagues who are helping set up business in Sweden for foreign companies, set up offices in Sweden for foreign companies. And then we have people like Georgios and me, who are mostly doing construction law and litigation, dispute resolution. Anything to add?
Yeah. So let's talk Swedish construction law for a few minutes. Obviously, as Fredrik said, there's nowhere near enough time to do this exhaustively, so we will be very brief. First thing to keep in mind, there is no actual Swedish basic construction regulation as such, any legal framework. Rather, the construction industry in Sweden is basically regulated by a number of standard contracts, which are, at this point, standard market practice, or very close to it. The first one, which you see here, is AB 04, and this one regulates, as you can see, general conditions for contract for execution works. So this one assumes that the contractor will not design the building or facility per se. The second big standard agreement is ABT 06, and in contrast to AB 04, the difference here is that the contractor also has the design responsibility. So this is a turnkey contract. Finally, there's also ABK 09, and this one regulates the issue of consultancy. So it's only the design phase. There's no regulation here regarding the actual building of the works. Generally speaking, these two contracts work very similarly. The only difference is, again, the design requirements of ABT 06, which are absent in AB 04. A typical structure here, you'll see the employer first employing some form of consultant, usually using ABK 09 as a basis for the contract, and they will draft the entire design for the project, and following that, they will procure a contractor, somebody to construct what has already been designed, and they will do so with AB 04, and possibly, if there are subcontractors, there will also be special provisions for that. By contrast, if you have an ABT 06 contract, there will be a design phase before the procurement, where the employer, at the very least, will want to define the purpose of the installation or the facility. You need to specify exactly what it is that you want, but most of the design work will be done by the contractor, who will then also usually contract with some form of consultant to do the design work. So basically, you have a performance contract on the one side, and you have a design and construct contract on the other. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind are the two forms of procurement that exist, because these can really affect how the project works, especially in the details. The first one is that you can have a general contract. Because there are so many parties usually involved, you have a consultant, you have an employer, you have some form of contractor, you have multiple subcontractors. The issue becomes, how do you coordinate all of these parties? Under a general contract standard, basically the employer doesn't have to worry about anything other than the contractor that they immediately contracted with. Everything else is done by the contractor. So any coordination work, any responsibility for the works done by any subcontractors is the contractor's headache. The other form of procurement that you can have is a divided contract, where the employer will individually contract different contractors within different areas. So for instance, an electrical contractor to work with electrical issues, a building contractor for the actual building works, etc. And they may in turn, of course, contract with subcontractors for whom they are responsible. But as you can see here, the coordination responsibility lies on the employer. So there's a different expectation on how active the employer has to be in the project as such, depending on which form of procurement you choose. Now, again, without going into the details about what the specific regulations here are, because there's no time for that, one thing to keep in mind is that these standard agreements have been negotiated by the parties in the Swedish construction market. And typically speaking, they are pretty well balanced. So you have both representatives for typical contractors and representatives for your typical clients and employers, representing the biggest firms, really, in Sweden. There's always this sort of temptation to want to make your own little tweaks to this. Our recommendation usually is to try to stick as much as possible to the standard, because the risk is that by introducing changes, you may end up changing things further down the road that you couldn't foresee. One example of this that I've seen multiple times is regarding alterations and additions and the right for the contractor to be paid for changes, basically, where a very, very hard-on employer will say something to the lines of, unless we order the change, no matter what, you're not entitled to payment for it. But at the same time, you're always obligated to perform any works we order you to make. This is standard under AB 04 and AB T06. And the problem here is that if there's a dispute between the parties as to whether some work is a change or not, with that sort of construction, the contractor is obligated to perform that work, but the employer will naturally not make an order because they do not consider it a change, and therefore the contractor will not be entitled under the contract to any additional payment. And that's something the parties usually haven't thought about when they make these changes. So typically speaking, try to stick to the standard conditions as they are. Do not make too many changes because they're difficult. The consequences are difficult to foresee.
Yes, and you saw on the previous slide there that you have the contract works are decided by the contract documents. That's the basic for how the risk is divided between the parties. What you didn't see on that slide is that you also have to take in the systematics of AB04 and ABT06. Like Jörger said, if you start changing something in one place, you have to make sure that you don't change or miss changing something else. That's a part of the systematics. Because the basic division of risk between the parties is what can the contractor calculate, looking at all the contract documents or the basis for tender, the big square. This is what we're going to build, but how we're going to calculate it. And the calculation is supposed to be done on whatever is written and visible in the documents, and what the contractor maybe can foresee should be there. Everything else stays with the employer. Things that are not shown, future surprises, maybe what's hidden under the ground, things like that. That risk is going to stay with the employer, looking at the economic risk between the parties. And that's looking at the tender phase, because things, as we know, are going to change during the project. You're going to find something that no one was thinking about before, or you're going to have an employer who wants to change the plan for what they're going to build. And to help understand AB and ABT, you have in both documents, you have a list of definitions and notes. And that's what we say to all our clients, both Swedish and international clients. Read those definitions and notes, because if you know those, you're going to know what's in the contract or in the AB and ABT. If you don't read it, you're going to walk around and think this has the same definition as it does in normal everyday life, walking around town. And most certainly it won't, because these definitions are viewed in exactly what they're defined as in the contract.
One example of this, for instance, the definition for works under these contracts includes materials, it includes any kind of equipment, etc. Under our normal everyday use of the word works, that wouldn't be included, but under these contracts, it is. So if you're responsible for the works, that includes responsibility for all materials.
And trying to give you some general notes or tips to keep in mind. Like we said, there are contract documents, and we showed the English versions on screen before, but to be honest, there are a lot of things lost in translation using the English documents. So if you have a project in Sweden, you should always use the Swedish document as a part of the contract and merely use the English version as a reference to actually using the Swedish. That's how bad it is, actually. And apart from that, our recommendation is to use some Swedish competence within the sector, in the business when you come here as a foreign company. Because we usually see that you do that when you set up your company in Sweden. You go through the lawyers and accountants, and you make everything by the book. You talk to the banks. Then you set up your organization in Sweden, and somewhere a lot of clients miss doing the same due diligence on that stage, and they start bidding for projects, and they win a project, and they start building. Most of the times a great house or a great building or a great bridge or whatever. But when it comes to using the contracts and the law, you're missing out. You're going to end up doing things that you wouldn't have done if you had the right competence, like a Swedish manager on site, or talking to lawyers beforehand, reviewing the contracts before signing, and so on. And I usually like it with if you go on a vacation, why not use a local guide to wherever you go? And you have a better stay, you're going to see the country, and you're going to meet people who knows their own country. And it's pretty much the same going into Swedish construction. You need to know the business and the systematics in some way, and how it differs from whatever you're used to in your own country. And this goes for Swedish companies as well as foreign companies. Make sure to be prepared to have documentation on everything. Firstly, read the contract, read it again, and read it every week during the project so you know your contract. And then you have to make documentation on everything that happens. If you have alterations or if you're hindered by something, document photos and send emails to the counterparty to document, because usually when you see the larger projects going to go on for 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years, and a lot of times the people who started the project are not the same people who are in the project when they're going to end the project, and everything agreed on the way there might be lost. At least it lost for ending up the economics surrounding the project, because when you come to the end, that's where you have to get paid as a contractor, and you as an employer need to know that everything is built in a correct way.
You can add here regarding documents. It's often the case during the project that what is supposed to be done is obvious to everyone. You're all in agreement. A couple years down the road, you will not be in agreement anymore. And if you don't have that document detailing, we agreed to change and use this material instead of that material, that's going to be a lot of headache for you. So a little bit of work during the project is better. It's going to save you a lot of headache down the road.
And probably you're going to avoid meeting guys like us.
Exactly. Usually, we see this with both Swedish and international clients, that both really fail to document properly any changes that may have happened, any side agreements and the like. And it's very problematic later on when you're in a dispute and have to prove the point you're trying to make.
And if you meet guys like us, that's the first thing we're going to ask for. We're going to see the documentation, the minutes from the meetings and all the emails and the contracts and every change you made. So that's why we always repeat that, to make sure to document the project all the way through. And trends in Sweden, we heard other people speaking before us about the same things pretty much. And it's pretty much the same thing in Europe. We had the pandemics and we had the war in Ukraine, and inflation has been upsetting even the Swedish construction market. And I see pretty much similar things that we saw in 2008, 2009, surrounding the Lehman Brothers crash. We had the same. We had a rise in bankruptcies, and you had a lot more litigation from the legal side that you had to make sure to get paid for whatever you have built before. And the time between then and now, there had to be more power in the market, and you're always focusing on the project and the next project. So that's a big change. And also, like we heard before, the bankruptcies, I heard just a few days ago that I think just looking at construction market, I think it's 40% more bankruptcies than the rest of the market. So it's an area that's going to be affected for some time. At least the smaller companies, maybe subcontractors, are going to be erased in some ways. But still, we got a deficiency in housing, at least in affordable housing, as we heard before. So looking just a few months ahead or a year ahead, I think we're going to be back, hopefully booming again on the market. And for us lawyers, the biggest news, we've been waiting for, I think it's 9 years since they started the works with remaking AB and maybe ABT into new documents. And they promised that we would have gotten them last year, and now they have promised we should get them this year. So we got to see some new legal documents or the standard terms for AB 04 at least coming hopefully this year. And I think that's a work that needs to be done because we have had a lot of cases in Supreme Court at least that has been changing and turning interpretations upside down that has been construction truth, as we call them in Sweden, that everything think this is the way it should be, and then the court comes in and says, no, this is not how it should be according to law. So I think some of those cases will be built into the new documents to catch up with the courts. And that's where we're closing up. If you don't have anything more to say.
No, I mean, an example on the matter of the increase of number of bankruptcies, why it's something to keep in mind. I think over the past 4 months, I've had at least 3 or 4 cases where they're good cases, we're likely to win, but the opposing party is bankrupt, so there's no money to get there. And worse yet, there is a parent company guarantee, but the parent company is also going bankrupt. So it's a good idea to think about other forms of securities in your contracts, because at least during this year, maybe a few months after, parent company guarantees may not be that security that they used to be before. That's just one example of something to think about when you enter contracts here.
And we're going to stick around as well for the afternoon. So if you have any questions or curious about more of the things we didn't have time to mention right now, you can just grab a hold of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. A big applause. Thank you so much. And as they said, they will stick around, so take the opportunity to network with them in the beautiful pink monter over there. And to make sure that you have all the different angles, how it is to do business here in Sweden and with us here in Stockholm, we are very happy to invite Leo Wallin to the stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Leo is a commercial manager and working at Nordic Ballast Nedam, and you know all the details how it is to do business and can share about the business culture in Stockholm.
At least a little bit. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to jump here. So I'm Leo Wallin. I'm the country manager for the Nordics for Ballast Nedam. I'm not sure if all of you are acquainted with it, but I'll just quickly mention who we are. We are a Dutch construction company. We're more than 145 years old. We have about 2,000 employees, and we work both internationally, nationally, and locally within the Dutch borders. So just to kind of frame in who we are one of the most historic builders in the Netherlands. We built, for example, the Afsluitdijk, which is one of the most famous projects in the Netherlands that connected 2 parts of the country and protected them against floods, where we had thousands of workers working back in the 1930s. But we also have pictures that are not in black and white, so these are some of the projects we're working on right now. So a lot of it, as you will see, is connected to the water. Being a Dutch company, we work mostly with marine works as our specialty works. So we build wind power mills, we build immersed tunnels, we build deep sea quays, and a lot of specialized structures, especially in infrastructure. that has a Dutch expertise that we think that we can bring to Sweden. And that is because we've also done that before. So we've been present in Sweden for 50 years. We started out doing dredging works in Luleå in the 1970s. We built some of the large bridges, including the Öresund Bridge around the shift of the millennia. And recently we worked on immersed tunnels in Gothenburg. But we are not one of the contractors that has a continuous presence here. We're more of a contractor that comes here when we have something special to bring in terms of competence. So, I'm going to speak a bit more generally. I just wanted to give you an idea about who we are. But why are there so many international companies looking to Sweden right now? I mean, just to kind of answer that question in one statement, this is from Trafikverket, so the largest construction client in Sweden. And they explicitly say that there are large investments in Sweden, and due to a lack of resources and also some specialist competences in Sweden, there is a need for international contractors to come and contribute to the Swedish market. But in doing so, it might be a smooth journey, but for most companies, it ends up being a little bit of a rocky journey at times. And my opinion is that this has to do more with our business culture than anything else. Because if you think about what is Swedish business culture, it's actually quite unique in an international perspective. This is an article from the Harvard Business Review. And if you just take a very, very rough look at things, you see that Sweden, together with Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, we're quite far off from the center here, and we're quite unique in terms of how we work together. So we're very consensus-driven, and we're very egalitarian. And that is a very different way of working to some other business cultures. And it takes some time to get used to. So I saw some examples from the former Director General, Olle Westberg, at the Swedish Institute, just as an example. He mentioned that he worked with Americans, where a subject was discussed for an hour or so, and then the Swedish chair concludes, yeah, we all agree, so just do it. Do what the American thinks, because there's a lot of communication going on that might not be as direct and clear as you might expect it to be from another, if you come from another culture. We also have these very flat organizations where a lot of informal decision-making is taking place, where it can be difficult to grasp exactly when the decision is made. It's more of a growth of a decision that comes gradually to you over time. So the kind of consequences of this is that the actual decision-making takes a longer time. As a contrast, I've been to Finland doing business there, and there you can usually sit down for one meeting, was my personal experience. And in the end of the meeting, you either have a yes or you have a no. In Sweden, it might take 1 year before you even have an idea if you're getting a yes or a no. But then once you get there, okay, then you can trust each other and go forward, because then we really mean it. But it takes time to mature here. And usually, once you get to that point, my experience at least is that everything else runs a little bit more smoothly. So you spend a lot of effort in the beginning, getting everything right, and then things shift. So trust the process. So hierarchies. Again, this is a fantastic picture. I've shown this to colleagues that work in companies from different countries, and I've gotten a lot of laughter. I come from a Dutch company, and I showed my Dutch colleagues this picture here, where one person tells the next person on the floor to the next, and then they select one poor guy who has to go to his manager and share the message to him. That poor guy goes to the lowest manager, who goes up, and then the top director goes down to the floor and tells them, this is my answer, this is how it's going to be. And to me, I just said, okay, but to my Dutch colleagues, they were almost turning in laughter, because this was so close to the truth. And there's a lot of nice examples of this all around. But we're talking about Sweden right now. So Sweden is in the top right corner. Primus inter pares is written there. It means the leader among equals. And if you look at the picture here, you see this consensus-driven way of discussion. So you really sit together around a round table and you talk. And then if you come in from the outside, it might even be difficult to see who is the actual manager in this setting. But it's very, very clear to Swedes usually. Swedish style of communication. This one I think is fantastic. I mean, this Finnish I noticed from work as well. When I went there, we had one meeting, we had one discussion. We laid out all the logical arguments for and against something. We discussed it and we decided. It was a very clear, straight process. The Spanish, it's very broad. I mean, maybe that's just assumptions here, but you might have noticed that Spanish people talk more than Swedish people in general. The Swedish one is absolutely fantastic. So it starts out with a lot of discussion, semi-formal, very proper, very correct, and then you meet resistance. And then it looks like any kind of initiative kind of dies out. Then it goes into a further follow-up discussion that leads to some level of consensus, and then you try to summarize it, then you meet resistance again. And then this part is the best part here, reluctance to seek new consensus. So everyone just gives up in the end. And then you just do whatever seems the least difficult for you to agree with. And then you start rephrasing it as the best possible way of doing things that you knew all along. So not being from this way of communication, I think you can kind of understand that this is a little bit of a hurdle to get into. This is not something that just comes naturally and something you might need to practice about. Then it all also links back to Swedish values. This one, I think, is quite funny. What is this and why is the point of me showing you a bunch of Vikings drinking mead? Well, it goes back to the word lagom, where a popular way of explaining this very, very Swedish word is like if you're in Denmark, everyone talks about hygge. In Sweden, everyone talks about lagom. And what is it that makes lagom special? Well, I mean, they say that the word comes back from laget om, so basically around the team. So everyone were supposed to share a barrel of mead, and then if someone got too much, everyone got jealous of that person, and he was kicked out of the team. And if someone got too little, he got irritated with everyone else and left. So basically the idea is that everyone should get exactly the same amount. And that word lagom is something that we have very much in our culture. It's connected to this law of jante that you might have heard of. But just one way of using it, take lagom with sugar, ta lagom med socker, means you should not take too much, you should not take too little, you should take just the right amount. And what is that just right amount? Everyone knows, no one knows how to explain it. But it is very much something that is part of the culture. And here they connect it in a book about Swedishness to fika and to our hard Lutheran work ethic and strong unions. But it's really one of the central pillars of understanding Swedish culture. And one way that it can go, just to illustrate this in a way that makes it a bit clear, in my opinion, two teenagers here, one asking the other, how did the test go? Oh, you know, average, and you got a C. Thank you for helping me get it. All right, see you later, bye. That was close. And then you can look at his paper, and he got an A. And it might seem completely foreign, but at least I know that when I went to school, this was a very real thought. You kind of hid it, your grades, if they were unusually good or unusually bad, because they should be just a little bit like everyone else. In conclusion, this map. This is the World Value Survey. It's one of the most comprehensive surveys about culture around the globe. And my point of this is not so much in going into the details of these different axes, but basically the horizontal ones as survival versus self-expression. You can read that as well as group orientation and individualism. The one on the left-hand side, traditional and secular rational, you can read that as well as religious versus non-religious. But that's not the point of delving in here. The point here is that if you look at this entire map and you look at which point is the furthest away from all the other points in the very corner, it's Swedish culture. So a lot of Swedes, we think as well, especially if we haven't worked internationally, that we are just like everyone else. But I think this is a good illustration of the fact that we're not. We are a very special culture, for good and for bad. There's lots of good things about it, lots of challenges with it. But I think that anyone coming to Sweden and wanting to do business here needs to keep this in mind, that you cannot just assume that we will reason relatively similar to how you reason in other cultures. You cannot assume that what you're saying, what comes out between the lines, is understood between the lines. So really take your time and make sure that you build enough of a relationship to really understand each other. Because otherwise you might go from a meeting and think you said the same thing and you understood each other, but it was actually the other way around. So with that said, there are long-term systematic needs for international competences and resources in the Swedish construction industry. There is no way around that. But to actually make this happen, you need to take into consideration the full knowledge and full approach that you need to take in order to join the Swedish market. And that includes the cultural aspect of doing business in Sweden. And if you get that right, I think that there's a lot of room, a lot of space for adding competence and resources to the market. So the best suggestion that I have here is to draw experience from locals, local partners, local employees, local advisors, local suppliers. Try to integrate as much as you can with the local ecosystem and be clear what you're bringing to it. And then I think that you might find a very, very interesting market to join. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leo. There was nothing lagom about that. That was really good.
Good to hear.
And you're right, we don't bribe. And please take the opportunity to network with Leo. He will be in the Stockholm Monter over there.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.